Skies of Arcadia. One of the best JRPGs on the Dreamcast, and one of the very few. A cool adventure with some small pirate simulation elements, story involving warfare amongst kingdoms, treachery, and the usual betrayal. It also has some really interesting development with its characters. Skies of Arcadia is a solid turn-based RPG with some free-roaming exploration in a semi-open world. I'd say it definitely threw its 2 big cents to the history of RPGs. Breath of Fire 4. The best in the series in my opinion again, but I really think this was the epitome. Sadly, it was the last true Breath of Fire after it perished 2 games later. It's a very conceptual RPG with beautiful art, 2 different points of view. Oh, and its combat here, I liked it a lot, with 3 party members up front and the rest right in the back. I wish more RPGs would let you do something like that. Grandia II. Grandia II was another big hit on the Dreamcast, possibly the best RPG there. Story is unrelated to the first game, now with a darker sense of humor. Still, it retained its charm, colorful nature, its comedy beats, and very likable characters. I felt, however, the battle system had improved drastically as it was more engaging and fun this time, and those in-game graphics? I don't know why they look so neatly done on the Dreamcast. But anyway, Grandia II is of course one of the best JRPGs of the year 2000. The Legend of Dragoon. Sony's big RPG project that had way more success in the West than in Japan. A long game that stood out for its amazing cutscenes with a different style in animation, interactive battles with that little extra push with the combos and the awesome Dragoon transformations. No argument here, it is one of the best JRPGs of this archetypal year. Valkyrie Profile. Speaking about archetypal, here's Valkyrie Profile, another huge project from the late 90s. It's another one of my personal favorites, with a strong focus on its dark and tragic story. Following the arduous existential crisis of Lenneth Valkyrie and her questioning of the war, the gods, and her own purpose. A masterful soundtrack brimming with all kinds of emotions, including the iconic battle system played in turns, side by side. 2D platforming with some puzzles involved, beautiful artwork everywhere. Let me praise as well the pixels, sprites, and animations, and okay, that's enough, let's move on. Final Fantasy IX. The last game in the series with a story written by the man himself, going back to its medieval roots with small steampunk elements. A true Final Fantasy game, a memorable cast of characters, an extremely charming and interesting plot, a stimulating battle system, music packed with nostalgia. This game just had everything it needed to be yet another masterpiece in this year. Chrono Cross. And for this one, I'll just let the game itself do the talking. Paper Mario. Paper Mario was, in a way, a continuation of the success of Super Mario RPG. Still, it was a turn-based RPG but completely played with 2D characters in 3D environments. So Mario and several different partners embark on a classic quest of rescuing Princess Peach. All this in a highly unique RPG, definitely a great successor to the masterpiece on the Super Nintendo. Final Fantasy X. Final Fantasy X was a sensation of this year, when all types of fans of the series embraced the PlayStation 2 era. However, it was also the first game in the mainline that started to feel different from its predecessors. Nevertheless, it remained a true classic and a JRPG beloved by millions of people out there. Shadow Hearts. No way I was gonna hand the throne to Final X, not when one of the most criminally underrated RPGs of all time was also released in 2001. Shadow Hearts was the spiritual successor of Kudelka on the PS1. It had a dark story with a very cynical protagonist involving demons, psychological twists, and the First World War. All this packed with an amazing battle system legendary for its Judgment Ring, deciding the amount of damage. This game just had to be number one, as it is definitely the best of 2001. Arc the Lath II. This one is the direct sequel, with both all the new characters, a longer story, improved battle mechanics, and a variety of missions in between each chapter. Arc the Lath 1 and 2 are the only ones worth it in the collection, as the third one was more quest-driven than anything, and honestly, it just wasn't that good. Suikoden III. Suikoden III is yet another game with 4 different main characters, each in their own story, missions, party members, and areas. How this story played out to intrinsically connect them all was marvelous. This excellent game charms you from the start, offering you a variety in battle lore with 3 cool systems intertwined. Chris also became a personal favorite in female protagonists. I love this game, man. No other in this list comes even close, so it felt right to crown it as the best JRPG of 2002. Disgaea, Hour of Darkness. The start of yet another iconic series, mainly known for its silly humor and cynical shenanigans. It's a joke of a story, revolving around demons, preemies, and overlords. A brutally hard strategy RPG, perhaps the hardest of the series, infamous for being a big, fat grind fest. Disgaea was so successful, it spawned several sequels, including a bunch of ports and remasters. Definitely one of the best JRPGs of 2003. Xenosaga Episode I. Another episodic game that turned out to be very different with each entry. The first episode, however, was released in 2002, but we got it until 2003. This excellent science fiction game marked the beginning of a memorable trilogy of turn-based RPGs, a spiritual successor to Xenogears, known for its heavy and deep focus in its story, its long cutscenes, and its unique cast of characters. Let's not forget about its 2 combat modes, one with the characters themselves and the other with the mechs they pilot. Xenosaga Episode I makes the 2003 equation just perfect. Fire Emblem: The Blazing Blade. Also known as the Blazing Sword, its subtitle was removed from a rather dumb reason. Since it was the very first Fire Emblem released outside of Japan, they simply took it off. Even though it's the 7th title in the series and a prequel to a game we never got. Anyway, this masterpiece is without a doubt one of the best in the franchise, the best RPG on the Game Boy Advance, and much graciously, the king of 2003. Paper Mario: The Thousand-Year Door. Many will claim this is the best Paper Mario in the series, a great improvement over its predecessor on the Nintendo 64. Interface, graphics and controls felt smoother, and I feel the story, however clumsy, was more interesting. Battle system pertained an evolution in the right direction with its perky characteristics. Paper Mario is one of the best JRPGs on the GameCube, and also from 2004. Tales of Symphonia. This one was the very first game to finally popularize the Tales series worldwide. It was also ported to the PS2, but that version remained in Japan. Symphonia snatched people's hearts with its cheesy cast of characters, but in a very charming story. The battle system also felt like a step in the right direction, now involving some 3D action in there. Definitely one of the best of 2004. Star Ocean: Till the End of Time. After the success of the second story, Square realized that there was a big market out there for Star Ocean. Tri-Ace then developed the third entry, with a cool bunch of characters and a secret main heroine. Yeah, big fan of Maria here. In this game the fighting was very technical, clunky and weird, so getting used to it took a while. However, it was one of those games that, upon understanding it, became a fantastic experience. Shadow Heart's Covenant. The long-awaited sequel to the King of 2001. Covenant follows the events at the end of the first game, with some new characters in the party, including a very interesting heroine and a plot twist near the end. Gameplay-wise, this excellent game carried on the legacy of the amazing battle system and did it better. Graphics, music, interface, etc. were highlighted as well. Shadow Heart's Covenant was a very balanced game and one of the greatest RPGs of 2004. Baten Kaitos: Eternal Wings and the Lost Ocean. One of the most unique JRPGs of all time, the masterpiece Baten Kaitos. Among the best stories ever written for one, luring the gamer with its twists and diverse cast. Lovely graphics and mind-blowing artwork, while the soothing soundtrack by Motoi Sakuraba flows in. Yes, there's the use of cards for everything here, including armor, which gave it a big touch of brilliant originality. Baten Kaitos is, without a doubt, one of the kings of 2004. Shin Megami Tensei Nocturne. The only reason this tough guy beat Baten Kaitos on the first place is because of its legacy, the historical importance of it, the first game in the main SMT series we ever got, and one of the hardest JRPGs of all time. It just felt right to crown this extremely influential game that spammed greatness in the shadows. It became a cult following monster as it threw the series into a commercial success. Radiata Stories. Created by Tri-Ace as a love letter to Suikoden, since you can also recruit dozens of characters here to join your ranks. Splendid story that shines with charisma all around it, just like its memorable world and its many inhabitants. Radiata Stories is a forgotten gem nowadays that you need to remember. It's one of the best of 2005. Dragon Quest VIII. I've always said there was a big jump, graphically speaking, from the last entry and this one. With the help of Level 5, Square Enix created a gigantic game with an enormous world and a deep, story-driven adventure. Once again, with the orchestral melodies this important series is known for. Fire Emblem: The Sacred Stones. One of the greatest JRPGs on the Game Boy Advance, second best only to its predecessor, the Blazing Blade. Perhaps one of the most popular out there, considered as a favorite back in the day. An outstanding addition to the series, a perfect salutation for beginners and veterans alike. If you think Dragon Quest VIII is better, I won't argue, but my love for Fire Emblem couldn't be ignored. Fire Emblem: Path of Radiance. Several months later, after the release of the Sacred Stones, the fandom was ready to meet the masterpiece of the GameCube. Path of Radiance defined evolution in strategy RPGs in the highest level possible back then. I applaud the incredible invested story with its large cast of admirable characters, the carefully designed maps in all their tactical glory, a surprisingly exceptional soundtrack and a perfect interface. I wholeheartedly deliver the crown of 2005 to Ike and his legendary band of mercenaries. Kingdom Hearts II. A sequel that far surpassed the first one, bringing many fans into the franchise. This is the only game in the series I really liked and finished. A magic adventure into the worlds of Disney and Final Fantasy, with some really deep and emotional moments right on spot. Final Fantasy XII. The big, huge project from Square Enix, and also quite the controversial game. This one changed the battle mechanics, goodbye turn-based forever in the series. It played in a resemblance to MMORPGs after the success of the previous entry, Final Fantasy XI. A long and great game, quite important this year, one of the best in 2006. Xenosaga Episode III. Finally, the conclusion, the masterpiece, the game that surpassed its two predecessors by a landslide. Graphics, music, interface, frame rate, pacing, wow. Nobody complained about the combat now since it was just perfect. What an emotional and fantastic ending. Because of some of my personal favorites, this game can be higher on the list, but do not forget, it's still one of the absolute best JRPGs of 2006. Tales of Legendia. Told ya, this video will include some high-tier games in my personal library. Legendia, I've always stood up for it and will always defend it to death. The most underrated title in the series, completely undeserving of its hatred. Let me also say that its uniqueness is precisely what made me love it so much, quite above all the others in the franchise. Valkyrie Profile 2, Silmeria. My favorite PS2 RPG and the one that should be number one in this list. Hard to get into at first, but extremely addictive if you push forward and exploit it. A big grindfest, alright, totally worth the time and effort. It has a magnificent story, heartbreaking, with carefully designed and developed individuals. Highlighted graphics and music here, which helped carve its peak above the others as the masterpiece that is Valkyrie Profile 2. Suikoden V. I would have preferred to give the throne to Valkyrie II, but I decided to keep the tradition, as almost all the other main games in this series held the crown in their videos. Suikoden V is my favorite, an RPG I've always believed to be slightly above the second game. Long adventure, detailed world, lore and story, vast amount of likable characters, and last but definitely not least, the 3 best battle systems in the entire series. I loved every single one of them to pieces. Suikoden V might have been the last main title, but as of today, it stands as the Crown Lord of 2006. Jeanne d'Arc. This is the other one by level 5, but completely different. Now it's tactical warfare played on grids, and a very good one at that. Mature story here, more solemnity, and less anime tropes. It also has one of my personal favorite main characters in existence, with sharp development. Wild Arms V. The 5th and final main game so far in this forgotten series. My favorite of them all too, of course. It took the battle mechanics from its predecessor with mixed reviews and did it so much better. It's still turn-based, just adding a little strategy here and there, mostly playing with the elements. Once more we see a mix between science fiction and the Wild West. All this with yet another favorite girl of mine here. Eternal Sonata. Even though this is the vanilla version, it's still a beautiful masterpiece. Its full display of art, music and graphics is simply magnanimous. A game with a uniquely good battle system so hard to compare, mixing precise action with turns. Brimming with nostalgia and melancholy, the story takes your hand along with its remarkable group of characters, together unraveling the mystery of Frédéric Chopin's alleged dream. Persona 3. Speaking about vanilla versions, this is Persona 3, one game most people are already acquainted with. Regardless, it was the start of a new direction for the series, with overly addictive gameplay mechanics, still with its very dark touches, embracing a deep and tragic story. Odin Sphere. Still in the vanilla pages here, now with yet another masterpiece. Yes, an extremely hard game, grindy but mostly sheltering the classic trial and error. Art that is just beyond gorgeous, peacefully synchronizing with its magnificent soundtrack. 5 different stories with 5 unique characters intersecting in yet another marvelous but tragic story. Fire Emblem Radiant Dawn. One of the very first JRPGs released on the Wii and a masterful sequel to Path of Radiance, carrying over the plot, turmoil and cast from that game, but presenting now a small new group of characters. Excellent gameplay, just like before, with neat graphics and intuitive controls. Advised to play on easy mode because it's the real normal mode, due to an error in localization. Growlanser, Heritage of War. One of the best JRPGs of 2007 is without a doubt this extremely obscure paragon, the pinnacle of the series, the 5th and final game to be published outside of Japan. Several story arcs involved, all uniting a true main route bound by decisions that affect the outcome. The supporting cast shines as usual in a strong sense of duty and friendship, but also harsh on betrayal and politics. What a gem, a jewel, a most deserving first place on the list. However, .hack.gu Trilogy. I gotta give the honor, just this time, to a much bigger experience. A gigantic game told in 3 volumes. Since Part 2 and 3 were localized until 2007, I brought along the first game from 2006. You know it, taking control of a bunch of players in the fictitious MMORPG, The World. One of the best stories ever written in a role-playing game because of its originality, its careful detail in the lore and writing, and of course the astounding character development shown here. This excellent action RPG is definitely the king of 2007. Persona 4. The vanilla version of this extremely popular and beloved game, a fantastic follow-up to its amazing predecessor, but with more light and less darkness. It still revolved around a rather twisted story, but its delightful cast of characters blended in with the colorful charm of the game. No questions asked, it is one of the best JRPGs of 2008 as well. Valkyria Chronicles. Moving on to the start of a very addictive series of tactical RPGs, Valkyria Chronicles took influence from the XCOM games and did its transition to a fictional world war just right. Overbearing gameplay here, this excellent title simply became an authority in the genre. Its cel-shaded graphics, its enthusiastic cast of characters, and its dramatic story, they all cuddle up to create one of the best JRPGs of this year. Lost Odyssey. You know this one very well already, a great turn-based RPG created by the mastermind Hironobu Sakaguchi. Plot, music and graphics are so goddamn good, some people even dare say it is the true Final Fantasy XIII. Possibly because the storytelling itself is beyond brilliant with quite the unique concept. Lost Odyssey is simply superb, in high need of a modern re-release. Dragon Quest V. Considered by many as one of the best in the series, with even a Netflix movie based on it recently released. It was published for the Super Famicom and then on the PlayStation, but you already know where those versions stayed. So this DS remake was the very first time the world got to officially experience Dragon Quest V. One of those RPGs that start off somewhat slow, then become a very pleasant and unforgettable adventure. Shin Megami Tensei Devil Survivor. It was developed by Careersoft, the creators of Langrisser and Growlanser, along with Atlus. Another masterpiece, but extremely hard and unforgiving. Strategy RPG playing on grids, but with battles becoming turn-based when facing an enemy. Each character with their own pair of demons fighting along. Great music, great focus on its story, where the player's decisions truly affect the events of the game. Perhaps not the best version anymore to play nowadays, considering it's the Nightmare Vanilla, but still, even so, the absolute greatest JRPG of 2009.